following is a CUNY TV special presentation.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us on this beautiful summer day. It is again with sadness that I come up again and ask all of us to have a moment of silence. Just a week ago at our last breakfast, we did that, and it's too short a time in between these tragic events that our country and our world have really been shaken by the unexplained acts of violence. First, the horrific attacks in Nice on Bastille Day on the 14th, and then obviously closer to home with the shooting of 3 dedicated police officers that took place in Baton Rouge. Our hearts go out to the families of the victims, and I ask all of us to do a moment of silence. Thank you. I know many of us struggle to come to grips with what is going on in the country and the world as cities including Paris, San Bernardino, Brussels, Orlando, Istanbul, and now Nice and Baton Rouge have been targets of hate and violence. So I believe that there's no better time to have the NYPD and Deputy Commissioner Miller address Abney community to discuss what our police department is doing to make us safer. Joining us this morning, along with the Deputy Commissioner, who is the head of intelligence and counterterrorism for the NYPD, is our great police commissioner, Bill Bratton, and Chief of Department, Jimmy O'Neill, and the rest of their team, who I think we all should give a round of applause and thank them. Thank them for their incredible vigilance, for leading our amazing police department, keeping us safe. In fact, the statistics released just last week show that New York City saw a record low in shootings during the first 6 months of the year, a 21% drop at a time when crime in other major cities has been rising. So you'll hear more details about that when Deputy Commissioner Miller comes up and talks to us. And now it's my pleasure to introduce John Miller. We are honored to have John, Deputy Commissioner of the NYPD, share his thoughts on the ongoing threats that our nation as well as our city face, and to update us on the NYPD's efforts to keep New York City protected from these threats on a daily basis. John has a distinguished career in intelligence and law enforcement. He's held the post of Associate Deputy Director of National Intelligence for Analytic Transformation and Technology, and prior to that was Assistant Director of Public Affairs at the FBI. He's also was a reporter at CBS News and served as Chief Spokesman for the NYPD from 1994 to 1995. Deputy Commissioner, thank you for joining us this morning, and we look forward to hearing your presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, Deputy Commissioner John Miller.
So the good news is, and that'll end right after this, the good news is we are in the safest statistically and best protected in terms of the numbers, the training, the equipment, city in the United States and probably the world. The challenging news is we are here at one of the most dangerous, confusing, and changing times in terms of global terrorism and how it affects New York. The picture beside me is a gun can stop a heartbeat, but a camera can give life to 1,000 hearts. One would think, looking at it, that this is a little bit like, beat your swords into plowshares messaging. Interestingly, the gun is put together as a collage of camera parts and communications devices. And it's a favorite symbol that was cobbled together by ISIS to show that their best weapon is not the gun, the knife, or the bomb. It's how they communicate on a global scale, the effect of those weapons in the hands of people, whether they're trained terrorists who are being directed from a camp and sent to a city like Paris to carry out a carefully planned attack, or whether they're borderline emotionally disturbed people who are just watching the propaganda and deciding to act out. Increasingly, we are seeing not just a changing threat, but also a layered threat, where we see mixtures of workplace violence combined with terrorist themes, mixtures of emotionally disturbed people or people in crisis because of things happening or not happening in their personal lives, who adopt a terrorist narrative to change who they are in the story. So what I'd like to go through in a quick arc in the time we have is, what are we seeing in the latest version of this picture? And we won't go very far back in time because unfortunately you don't have to anymore. And what have we been doing long before that to build the protective measures in this city to look at that? This is the call to arms, if you will, by Sheikh Adnani, who is the operational commander, but also the main communicator for ISIS. It came out in September of 2014, and basically, if you can kill a disbelieving American or European, then kill him in any manner, however it may be. Do not ask for anyone's advice. Do not seek anyone's verdict. Kill the disbeliever, whether he's civilian, military, with a knife, or run him over with your car. Now, if you think of the date on this, September 2014, this comes out in September. By October 22nd, you have Martin Rouleau in Canada. He doesn't have a bomb or a gun, but he takes his truck and he runs over several Canadian soldiers, and in the chase and shooting that follows, he's killed. And immediately, and this is about not just a communications vessel, but a communications machine, immediately through social media, through Twitter, through Facebook, through other platforms, through YouTube, ISIS is communicating out. Now remember, they never met this Canadian Martin Rouleau. He never went to a camp. He didn't get to Syria. He didn't fight. They don't know each other. But they know he got the message, and they know he did it in their name. So they are extolling him as a hero and a martyr. And the next Martin Rouleau is on the other end of that screen receiving that message saying, I could be that guy. And so, 2 days later, an individual named Martin Zahef Bibeau kills a soldier at the War Memorial and runs into the Parliament in Canada shooting with a rifle, and he's killed in the subsequent gun battle. The next morning in New York City, on a rainy day on Jamaica Avenue in the middle of a shopping district, an individual named Zale Thompson attacks 4 police officers with an axe, injuring one of them, Officer Healy, severely. We are gratified and really happy in our hearts to tell you that Officer Healy is back at work in the police department and remains a police officer, and along with his partners, is a great hero in this story. But you see what I'm talking about. The message goes out, the message resonates, people act on it, and then people act on the people acting on it. It becomes a cascade. When you look at much more recent events, and you don't have to go further back than Orlando, that's where you begin to see the mixing of themes. You know, the more we learn about this individual who was behind this horrific shooting, was it anti-American? Was it anti-gay? Did he have his own sexual crisis going on personally, mixed against his confusion over religious beliefs? And when we look at this offender, you know, we see what ISIS does
Lorsque nous sommes en guerre,
but they
nous
take
prenons
a
des
victory
mesures.
lap around these other incidents.
Armés, les civils. Pour Allah, celui que nous unifions. Pour Allah, nos vies, nous les sacrifions. Pour Allah, celui que nous glorifions. Pour Allah, oui, nous vous terrifions. Pour Allah, celui que nous unifions. Pour Allah, nos vies, nous les sacrifions. Pour Allah, celui que nous glorifions. Pour Allah, oui, nous vous terrifions.
So the message is clear, and they're telling us a bunch of things. They're telling us that A, this doesn't have to be Al-Qaeda with a 2.5-year planning arc to a spectacular type level attack like 9/11. What they're talking about is low tech, low cost, high impact. When a man can go rent a truck and bring the kind of carnage to a happy celebration by the beach that we saw in Nice, we understand how Sheikh Adnani's original 2014 message, use what you have. Don't seek anyone's advice or verdict. What does that mean? That means you don't have to clear this with the mothership. You don't have to find us and say, here's our plan, do we approve it? You just have to figure out what your capabilities are and act on them. And who would do that? And why? But what we're finding is, do you remember the messages from Al-Qaeda? Osama bin Laden would release a videotape. Ayman al-Zawahiri, the number 2 guy, he would release a 45-minute message, him talking to the camera, pointing his finger. It was a lot of kill, kill, kill. We don't see that from ISIS. You don't see Omar al-Baghdadi. You don't see Sheikh Adnani. What you see is films about the fight and about the fighters. They focus on the people at the bottom of the struggle, because what they're selling is not do what I tell you to do. What they're selling is this could be you. And what is the this could be you? That breaks down to a different 3 things. It's they're taking people who are living on the margins, who are failing at home with their own families, estranged, or who are failing at work. Professionally, they're not making it. Or who are failing at school because they can't make it to that next level. Or who are failing at life and they're saying, if you join this, you're a winner because you will achieve valor. You will be a hero because you will act out for us. You will achieve belonging. Finally, you, who are a part of nothing, who have been rejected from everything you tried to be a part of, will belong to something bigger than yourself. You will be a part of ISIL. And finally, empowerment, which is, look at the last video of the last guy who struck. That could be you. You would be empowered by doing something in our name. And so their latest wrinkle is to encourage people not just to act in ISIL's name as Sheikh Adnani does, as Sheikh Adnani did, but in a new phenomenon that we call dying live, is to somehow stream that video, record it live, keep it live, get it out, and claim responsibility for ISIS, not before the incident with some videotape FedEx to a network or a communique left taped to a phone booth, but to claim responsibility for ISIS live during the incident. And we see evidence of that. If you go to the Orlando shooting, you see some of this conundrum coming to life. Look at this guy. He's wearing NYPD gear, that he bought in New York City. He aspired to be a law enforcement officer. He wanted to have what? What do you get when you join our team? You get valor, you get belonging, you get empowerment. But he wasn't making it. He didn't measure up. Tried to apply to the sheriff's office, worked in corrections, ended up with a security company, but he kept getting let go from jobs because he wasn't making it. So he turned to that other channel that said, we don't really screen for quality. You can make it here. And during the massacre in Orlando, he calls 911. Why? Because he knows it'll get out to the media and it'll be recorded. And he says, Omar Martin, in the name of God, the merciful, beneficent, praise God, so on and so forth. I'll let you know I'm in Orlando. I did the shootings. What's your name? My name is, I pledge allegiance to Abu Bakr Baghdadi of the Islamic State. He's throwing down that marker for ISIS live during the incident, just the way he's told to. And the rest of the script is that during the incident, on the other side, you have to come out in a blaze of glory and martyr yourself. If you go just a little bit after that incident, something that has given law enforcement around the world a lot of concern, you've got another individual associated with ISIS with a group of people who surveil and collect information on police officials in Paris, goes to the home of a police commander of a small command 40 miles west of Paris, kills that police commander as he's coming up the walk from his house, then goes in, takes the individual's wife, who is also a police employee, hostage with their 3-year-old child, and this hostage situation is ended by the intervention of BRI and RAID, the 2 SWAT teams in France, which we have, through unfortunate circumstances, have become great friends and contacts with, and he is killed during that raid. But I think if you look at this whole idea of living out loud through social media or dying live in the name of ISIS, he goes on his Facebook page and having killed the wife and contemplating what to do with the 3-year-old, he begins a live streaming message claiming responsibility for ISIS.
Premièrement, je prête mon allégeance à Amir al-Mouminin Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi al-Quraishi, hafidhahullah. Mes premières paroles s'adressent à la communauté musulmane, à la Umma islamiyya. Ya Ummati, que t'est-il arrivé? Comment en es-tu arrivé là? Quel châtiment s'est abattu sur toi? Tu gouvernais le monde et tu te retrouves gouverné. Tu as appliqué les lois d'Allah sur terre et dorénavant on applique les lois du Tarout à ton égard. Ma lakum.
That, of course, chronologically takes us to Dallas. I don't need to go through the facts or circumstances of Dallas because you all know that from the news, it being so recent. But it does go to this theory of the blending of themes. Now, here is an offender who is trained by the U.S. military in the Army, been to Afghanistan, not making it there. He's taken out of that country because of allegations from other soldiers about his conduct. He's not really making it in the workforce there. He's not making it in a lot of ways, but what he does have is he has the training, the familiarity with weapons, and he strikes out in a way that is very much somewhere in between what we call the active shooter and what the terrorists call an inspired attack against police. Again, not terrorism in the classic sense, but when you're having police officers and citizens gunned down by a sniper in the middle of an anti-police rally where the demonstrators and the police came together in the most shining example of how a democracy works. The police facilitated, guarded, protected the demonstration to make sure that it could march along its route. And the demonstrators, while protesting several incidents involving police around the country, thanked and even hugged police along the route for allowing them to have a safe and well-organized demonstration. All the wheels were turning exactly the way they're supposed to in a democracy until they were interrupted by gunfire. Anything to do with ISIS? Obviously not. But if you peel back another layer, when you're seeing these calls for attacks, low tech, low cost, high impact, when you're seeing the impact that those are having, you're seeing other people drawn to the same training tactics and techniques that have nothing to do with the main cause.
Peace, family. What up with y'all? I'm in Dallas right.
Let me back up a second. When the Dallas attacks happened, there's another young man. He's a Marine. He has written several books, self-published, that are not exactly killing it in circulation. He's got a YouTube channel where his last broadcast to his followers had a grand total of 71 views. So you'll see him in this next video sitting up in bed, kind of musing about his view of the struggle in America and what's required of those in the struggle. and how demonstrations aren't making it, aren't the answer, that violence is the answer. We will meet him again in a couple of weeks as the shooter in Baton Rouge. But here he is in Dallas, and that's what we can tell you that we know. I think what we can surmise from that this is a developing personality trait in this blending of threats where he's looking at the individual in Dallas, and he's got his 71 viewers on YouTube. You can find more people on the corner outside this hotel. But he's looking at that other shooter and he's saying, his name is all over the media, his picture's everywhere, he's famous or infamous. If I did something like that, I could go beyond my 71 viewers in this new world where we're all living out loud, either for good or for evil, and that he was inspired by that.
I'm in Dallas right now, in the streets, on my book tour, on another book tour, giving the knowledge out to my people. And I had already decided that I was coming to Dallas before the even, police shooting already happened. So I was already decided. So I don't know. I guess it's just, the spiritual was just telling me it was the right place to come before. But I go with the history. 100% of revolutions, of victims fighting their oppressors, from victims fighting their bullies, 100% have been successful through fighting back, through bloodshed. 0 have been successful just over simply protesting.
You get the message that lawful protest isn't the answer. And here's an individual who is, again, trained by the US military, extraordinarily capable, and articulate, able to construct a message, but obviously has some things going on in the background of his life that chose him to take this path. And then we see the results of it this weekend. So there's no new threat in that we've seen some version of every one of these before, but what we haven't seen is this type of cadence. We haven't seen these threats coming as fast or as furiously or in such great numbers with such regularity as we have, and that has become a challenge not just for the NYPD, the Joint Terrorism Task Force, the FBI writ large, the American intelligence community, but obviously our global partners in places like Brussels, in Belgium, where they have a very small but dedicated security service, across Europe, where they're still trying to figure out between 28 countries what is the shape and form of information sharing. And that affects us too, because information that they're collecting and sharing or not sharing is information we need over here because it's a global problem and people travel. If you look at the train stabbing from yesterday, again, we see a 17-year-old Afghani kid armed with nothing more than a knife and a hatchet, critically injures 4 people. But again, he's streaming live, claiming credit for ISIL. What do we do about that? New York remains statistically the #1 target for terrorists, and I say statistically because no other place, Washington, Los Angeles, where Commissioner Bratton was chief, and I had the honor of serving as his counterterrorism chief, no other place has been the target of over 20 plots, either hatched on New York soil to be carried out elsewhere or targeting New York soil. So that number, depending on how you categorize them, can go higher than 20. But there's no other place that matches in the numbers. So that's one concern. The other concern is that, in a very positive sense, every single one of those plots has been interdicted, foiled, uncovered, stopped, and arrested. If we were sitting here a year ago, I would be telling you about a plot by ISIS to commit 2 acts of terrorism in New York City before the 4th of July. These boiled down to 3 bins. Inspired, I watch the videotapes and I want to carry something out. Enabled, because now ISIS is talking to me directly over Twitter, saying meet us on our encrypted application where The FBI and the CIA and the NYPD can't even listen, not even if Cy Vance gets us a court order, because we can't get past that encryption. And we'll plan the whole thing out over this channel. And that's inspired. That's enabled when they're talking directly. And then there's directed, and that's where they train them in a camp and send them over. Think of the Bataclan theater attack in Paris, where the team was already hardened foreign fighters who were imported into France for the specific purpose of being that sleeper cell and then executing. Every time they do a video, they are claiming credit for all of these things, demanding credit, claiming responsibility. And I think, you also always see that while they failed to attack here, New York remains a theme in those videos. Will you roll this? Thanks, Andy. This is one of their ones where you can see an individual putting together a suicide bomb, a lot of their other acts, but also a New York backdrop.
Wir haben nur ein Leben und Allah er hat's gegeben. Die Zeit, sie ist am Laufen, also Brüder, steckt euch an. Schaden lassen reden, die Erde ist am Leben. Red einfach was für Segen, eine Gabe von Allah. Wenige von wenigen, sie sterben für eine Sache. Sterben oder siegen, la ilaha illallah. Jetzt ist er gekommen, es ist nicht zu verschweigen. Jetzt ist er gekommen, wir nennen es Qital.
The gun, the knife, the bomb, they're giving the people on the other end of this video their choices. What do you have in stock? What can you buy? What can you get? Operate within your capabilities. So I think that roughly frames the challenge we face. Now I'd like to spend some time on the more important side of this message, which is what have we been doing to meet this challenge? So we start off with a tremendous foundation. Commissioner Kelly, Commissioner Bratton's predecessor, David Cohen, my predecessor, spent more than a decade building a counterterrorism and intelligence foundation in the NYPD, unrivaled by any other police department. On the other hand, we have a threat that is constantly morphing and changing and adjusting and shifting. So no one plan can stay in place and work. You have to morph and change and develop, and in our case, had to grow to keep up with it. First thing we realized was that we needed to make adjustments in the CRV program. The CRV was a system where we borrowed a police car, and this was a legacy system that had been in place for almost a decade, from every command in the city, every precinct, that's 77, every transit district, every housing district. Somehow we put together about 104 police cars a day and put them out to cover locations that emerged in the threat stream that were of concern to us, that were high profile, and you saw them out there. But in a way, they were a bit of a scarecrow. These officers had no particular special training in counterterrorism, certainly had no particular special weapons or protective gear in terms of plate vests or helmets. So when Commissioner Bratton sent me to Paris to review the Charlie Hebdo shootings, to walk backwards through the Hadir supermarket hostage situation and said, look at what they did there, run it against how that would go here, and tell me what we need to do, I came back and said, what happened in Charlie Hebdo is there was a massacre in a newspaper office. The bad guys came out, and they waited around for the police. And then with superior firepower, AK-47s and a vehicle, and very little regard to whether they lived or died, drove that fight towards the police and killed police officers who were outgunned. That might be how that would run here unless we make some adjustments. So Commissioner Bratton went to Mayor de Blasio and said, we need more cops. Over time, the New York City Police Department had shrunk by 6,000 officers, and we needed to grow back up to size to confront this challenge. My prescription was, I need 500 of those to form an elite uniformed counterterrorism force so we can stop borrowing police from precincts and commands and have people out there who, if we experience the Paris situation, would be properly trained, properly equipped, properly briefed on the intelligence to know what they were facing and how to confront it on an equal level with their attackers, if in fact they were well armed and well trained. That resulted in the mayor working with the city council at Commissioner Bratton's behest to hire over 1,300 new police officers. So for the first time in over a decade, the NYPD began to grow again, to grow to fit this challenge. The second result was peeling off 525 of those police officers to form this elite counterterrorism force in uniform, the CRC, the Critical Response Command. These people are briefed on the intelligence from around the globe every day. They are trained in the right tactics. They are equipped with the right things. That means that they have been through the active shooter training, where they are put in environments, a school, an office building, a special training facility we have, and they are confronted by role players who are shooting at them with simunitions, taking hostages, replicating actual situations that we study and then replay. And the officers going into the scenario don't know which situation they're confronting, whether it's one they've confronted before, whether it's completely different, whether it was one written last night. And after they go through that training, they are called back to situations at random where they're saying, hey, you got this training 4 months ago, but here's the call you just got, here's the big building behind you, and go in there, and they are tested on it again. That's in combination with the SRG, that's Chief O'Neill's Strategic Response Command. Same training, same long gun weapons, same heavy vests, same ballistic helmets, so that takes from 500 to an additional 600, and that, of course, is fronted by our go-to people. That's the ESU, the Emergency Service Unit. And that is just under 500 people who are the Navy SEALs of the NYPD. They can unstick a stuck elevator, climb to the top of a bridge and rescue a jumper, but they are also our SWAT capability and our weapons specialists. So that takes us from a city that was using a little bit of a lend-lease program in terms of placing police cars out there as a visual deterrent to a place where we now have a tactical capability of almost 2,000 people trained and equipped with the kind of tactics and equipment and protection to take on the threat the way it is emerging around the globe. There is no other city, there is no other police department anywhere on earth that has this capability, this level of training, or these numbers. So I frame the threat for you the way I have, but I also want to frame how we have been steadily moving forward to meet that challenge in a way that our partners in Europe are just starting to think about now. In fact, we went to Europe, studied their attacks, came back here, developed these layers of protection, these concentric circles of the ability to respond and reduce the bad guy's time on target. In other words, if something happens here, it's not going to run that long because nobody else can marshal these forces this fast in this environment to put that attack down or end it. So they are now coming back here to study what we've done in response to what we studied in their incidents. So we are working globally for these solutions. The other great development is the expansion of the Canine Corps. These behind me are not just regular bomb dogs. Bomb dog is a very useful tool. You can take a suspicious package in a big event and say, okay, Fido, is that a bomb? And if the bomb dog sits, that's a good time to go somewhere else. These dogs don't have to be directed to the suspicious package. These are the vapor wake dogs. The first signs, no pun intended, the first whiff of this was when we were in Los Angeles and we were learning about the science, and LAPD deployed the first vapor wake dogs in their counterterrorism bureau in a major city. What we've done to follow on is we have gotten a cadre of these dogs. What's the difference? You don't have to say, okay, dog, there's a package. Tell me if it has an explosive odor. The name of the dog tells the story. They can pick up the vapor wake coming off a package moving through a crowd. Picture, if you will, the Boston Marathon bombing. You've got Dzhokhar Tsarnaev and his brother with those big backpacks filled with explosives, moving, snaking throughout that crowd towards the finish line. If a vapor wake dog had been on that sidewalk or anywhere near there, they would have picked up the trail of those explosive vapors moving from the crowd, put the handler onto the two suspects, who then could have called for backup. And I won't get into the tactics of how we do this, but it is a carefully choreographed takedown that happens in these cases. And we now have a lot of these dogs, and we're getting more. So we continue to look at every scenario. If you focus everything on the shooter, some guy's going to come along with a truck. If you focus everything on going to all the truck rental places, some guy's going to come along with a bomb. If you focus on the bomb, you'll see an individual with a knife on a train, and so on. So we take a 360-degree approach with first intelligence to stop it, then tactics to interdict it if that fails. But it all works hand in glove. And I'll close and leave it for questions if we have the time, but I'll close with the other mandate from the police commissioner, which was, I want to repair every broken relationship in town. That means I need you working hand in glove with the fire department about, if we have an active shooter, how is the fire department EMS going to get in there before it's over and get wounded people out? We can't wait till the thing is an hour later. I want to repair relationships with the FBI so that we operate hand in glove seamlessly. I want to fix relationships with the Port Authority and so on. So we did a little tour around New York, and we said, whatever we might or might not have been arguing about before, we're not arguing about anything. We need help, you need help, let's help each other. And that's where we are now.
John, thank you for that sobering but I think realistic view of what's going on in the world, but also more importantly what you and the commissioner and the NYPD have done to really deal with a very complex issue. I'm going to ask the first question. A program that was initiated by Commissioner Kelly, which was very innovative, was, and you mentioned you going to Paris. Can you just give us an update on your detectives that are overseas and how many we have, and what intel have they been bringing back to police headquarters?
That's our foreign liaison program. When we got here, we had 10 foreign posts. We're on our way to 13 now. And that means having a detective in Tel Aviv. It means having one in Amman, Jordan. It means London. It means Paris. It means Singapore. It means Sydney, Australia, which is an increasingly important partner. I just came back from there. And it also means getting New York City as a city of the world into the global partnership, where our detective assigned to Interpol is also the acting deputy director of the Interpol operation in Lyon, France, because he's been there that long and he's an extraordinarily competent supervisor. We now have a person in the relatively new organization, Europol. Think about that. You're an NYPD detective sitting in The Hague in Europol. That has been an extraordinary partnership that we've developed and expanded. What do we want out of that? You know, what the FBI wants is, they want attribution. Who's behind it? What's the intelligence? Who are their leaders? Can they be captured? Should they be charged? We need something different. We need to know, what was the bad guy's plan? What was their target? How did they execute that plan? Did it succeed or fail? And most importantly, if you took that plan and you put it over a New York overlay against a similar target or targets, how are we protected here? And we need to know that hour of that day, you know, that week, so that we can then take these forces, the Critical Response Command, the Strategic Response Command, ESU and the Hercules teams, and shift them into that threat to be protective.
I just would like to add that you're talking about partnership, and we have Susan Birnbaum and the Police Foundation here, who have been a very active partner with the NYPD to help raise the funds to do many of the things that you have been talking about, and particularly the overseas detectives. So we in the private...
For 100% of that program.
There you go. So we in the private sector need to do our part in helping the NYPD and you know, making sure that they have the resources to make sure that we're safe. So I'm going to open up to the floor. Questions, comments? Yes, in the back. Hold on, wait for the microphone.
In the events that you've analyzed, were there enough digital clues that happened before the event that could have been used to predict and perhaps avoid them?
In some cases there were. The real question is, do we have access to those digital clues? And as District Attorney Vance has been really the pointy end of the spear in this argument, he has led this charge for law enforcement across the country. That aperture is slowly closing. Our good friend, the FBI Director, Jim Comey, calls it going dark. But the more they're encrypting those applications, the more that we are being shut out from that picture. And this is a conversation we've been having with the tech industry. And, you know, the big argument from, you know, if you take a small piece of that, which is the Apple phone encryption where you can't get into the device and neither can Apple, even if you hand them an order from a federal judge, you know, they say, well, we do this for our customers' protection. And what we've said is, you know, the SWAT team in Paris told me when they went into the Bataclan Theater, you know, past the 80 dead bodies there, that the sound of ringing iPhones on the victims of that was a cacophony. People calling them up to say, are you okay? Did you get out? And I think when you talk about the concept of we do this to protect our customers, we have to join in together in that conversation and say, well, we have to protect your customers from other things. So we have to figure out a way to do this together. And that conversation is a little bit stuck.
There's a mic coming behind you.
Thank you, Deputy Commissioner Jamie McShane with the Real Estate Board of New York. How much, with all of so many of the people, lone wolf terrorists acting alone, living on the margins of life, as you said, how much of this is a mental health problem? I'd like your thoughts on what the Dallas police chief said, that we're asking police to do too much in this country. What are the mental health warning signs for some of these people who are failing and not making it in life? And if I could ask a second question, if you have time for it, with your experience in the news business, in the news media, what is the 7 TV cameras back here, what is their responsibility in how they cover these incidents and not glorifying these lone wolf perpetrators?
So on the first part of your question, what factor in the lone wolf appeal is reaching people who are mentally ill or having extraordinary personal issues? That is really what I was talking about when we start to see a blended threat. You know, if you look at some of the more confusing cases here, you know, we know workplace violence is when you go and shoot up your coworkers. Unfortunately, we lead the world in that kind of thing. But when you look at the San Bernardino attack, it's a terrorist attack. But what's his target? It's his own office Christmas party. Was it workplace violence? Was it a terrorist attack? Again, it's a blending of themes. Was he mentally ill or was he a committed terrorist? Probably more likely the latter, because what you see there is he's living the American dream. He's got a house, he's got a wife, he's got a new baby, he's got a government job, he's got a car. There's nothing that's not working in his life. So we spend a lot of time in offender characteristics going back through that. A handier example that's clearer for your question is Zale Thompson, the individual who attacked our officers with the axe. Here's a guy who was deep into the black separatist ideology, but when he posited his idea that we should use violence and attack the police, the very leader of the group that he was trying to act on behalf of said, we don't do that. We do economic boycotts, we do this, we do that, and rejected him. What did he do? Did he say, I have the wrong theory? No, he just changed channels. He changed to the terrorist narrative of ISIL and Al-Qaeda because that fit the script he needed to go by. I want to act out in violence because I'm not making it in my life. So he is a good example of a guy who was probably a terrorist in terms of ideology by convenience and probably also mentally ill. So this gets to a much more complicated question about how do you find these people? And if you can't arrest your way through that problem, as the chief said in Dallas, that's a lot to put on the police. But how do you get together groups of services to start to intervene and get them to counseling, help, or something else? And we're working with a number of organizations, including the FBI, on how do we develop something short of booming the door, search warrants, arrests, when that might not stick, but we can bring the person back in a better direction. So the second question is the media's responsibility. This is a thorny issue. If you stop covering the smaller terrorist attacks, they will morph to the bigger ones. I think the bullseye of your question is, why do we say these people's names and show their pictures 1,000 times so that that next person is saying, I could be famous like him? And that's something where the people who own those 17 cameras in the back have to do some more thinking.
You didn't touch on cyber terrorism and the threat to our city and our country. And you want to comment on that?
Sure. So, you know, this is another place where District Attorney Vance is leading the charge, as well as our colleagues in the FBI. The cyber threat is morphing faster and in a more complex way than even the threat that uses pure violence and bloodshed. If you look at 2015, you know, American companies paid out $90 million to buy back their own data from what you call ransomware. People who got into their systems, took it out in bulk, and said, you can't have it till you pay us. If you look at the Sony Corporation issue, you know, that was driven by a foreign actor, but the example is the same. $90 million. This year in the first quarter, that was over $200 million, which means we're on the way to $1 billion in ransomware. That's on the criminal end. On the terrorist end, we see their exploitation of the internet, but we also see them searching around and experimenting for what systems they can bring down. The idea that if you could launch a competent terrorist attack, but also affect the systems, whether it was the power grid or communications, that you need to respond to that, could you then double down? And that's something where we, of course, are looking at all our systems, saying, how do we raise those walls and make them thicker? And I think we've done a pretty good job on that. So it's a real factor.
Thank you, Commissioner, and Bill and the rest of the team. Thank you for your unbelievable dedication. And everyone have a wonderful summer. And if you see something, say something. Thank you.